all souls will try to reach out and comfort those who are mourning their deaths. They will try to reach into their minds and soothe them in various ways and give them through thought, powerful thought messages, the understanding that they're still alive. Sometimes it's hard because, of course, when we're undergoing this kind of grief, you can imagine that we're so overcome with grief that we might shut down in terms of these messages. So these souls might not be able to reach their loved ones for perhaps days or weeks or months later. But that is the intent, to make them feel comfortable. Then, as they pull away, souls describe bright lights and tunnels, the same as the folks that tell us who have had near-death experiences that they have seen. Now, let me explain something I think is really important. We've heard a lot about people seeing religious figures who have undergone near-death experience. I find no case in all of the cases that I've had over all of the years that I've been working with people through their death experiences who have ever seen a religious figure. What they see are their spiritual guides. These are those loving beings who are their teachers, who come to them at the moment of death to guide them into the spirit world. Now, I'd like to also say that you may also see people who you have known in this life who have passed on ahead of you who will also come and welcome you back. And this too is a very wonderful experience. For instance, people will see their mothers, for example, or a best friend who may have died in front of them, or a brother or sister, this sort of thing. And it's a very ennobling and beautiful experience for them. When a person who has just died sees their spirit guide or friends and relatives who they've known before, or soulmates, they usually see a projection of a face that is familiar to them. They may take the face of people that they have been in the life that is familiar to the person who has just died, or a face that they particularly like that that person who has just died knows how to identify them from. And so you have a number of different faces. People will describe them as looking like ghosts as they come towards us, and maybe this is where some of our mythology about ghosts comes from. Oftentimes they don't see anything below the waist. Essentially they see a light form coming, misty if you will, a pinpoint of light in the beginning, and then a misty shape, a ghost-like shape, and then when they get close they can make out, you know, features that are projected to them by the being that is coming towards them for recognition. No one that I have ever put in hypnosis has ever seen any demonic figures or hell of any kind. We have heard this from some people who have had near-death experiences, not many, a few. My feeling of that is that those folks who claim that they could hear screaming, demons dragging them before a tribunal of some kind for a judgment and so forth, and all these things that are very religious in overtones in terms of fostering fear, are simply not in the minds of my clients. When someone with a near-death experience says that they thought that's what they experienced, my feeling is that their conscious mind is coming into this in terms of preconditioning. Because remember, these people are not in hypnosis. They've just been hit by a car, or they're on an operating table bleeding to death. There's all sorts of things going on in their physical bodies in the case of trauma. And so what has happened here, in my view, is that their conscious mind is on overload, and all of those fears and anxieties that they have had in their walking around state about life after death is coming back to haunt them. They are not describing what really exists in terms of being taken in front of demons and being punished and so forth. Their bright lights and tunnels are real, but when they start getting into a lot of the things that concern them in terms of their conscious fears, I suspect preconditioning. My clients tell me that the spirit world is a place of love, forgiveness, and kindness. That regardless of what they have done on earth in terms of wrongdoing, if we could use evil and wrongdoing here as perhaps the reasons why someone might be sent into an area that maybe looks like hell, This just doesn't happen according to my clients. They are taken, in fact, to an area of isolation where they are given orientation sessions in terms of what it is that they did and why they did it. There's some energy reshaping going on. I explain in the book, Journey of Souls, about this process. And I just would like to say that these people, generally, who have committed evil, will probably, of their own volition, come back as victims in their next lives. They will volunteer for those assignments. So, no, the spirit world is not a place of terror and fear. Let me describe to you where I think some people get an idea of a tribunal. And this might be filtering down through their subconscious mind. We do go before a council of what I call elders, wise beings. They've been called the old ones, the sacred ones. There's lots of different names. These are very advanced beings who review the life just lived. Our guides do this. Our guides do this when we first cross over. They talk to us in the privacy of a very quiet setting. And so we can kind of unwind and get re-energized. And then we usually go into our home, if you will, our place in the spirit world where we belong. And we can talk about that in a few minutes. But what I'd like to tell you now is the tribunals concept that I hear a lot about. People worried that they might be hauled in front of demonic judges and made to account for all their sins. These wise beings are more advanced teachers. They rank, if you will, even above our guides in terms of knowledge, understanding, and experience. What generally I find happens is that our guides accompany us to a very quiet, serene area where these beings will talk to us. Now, I'd like to point out that I have had clients who have had only 3 of these elders in front of them, and some as many as 10 or 12. It really depends on the individual, what spirit group they're located in terms of how advanced they are and so forth. These beings will question them in a very gentle way about how you, as the person who has just died, conducted your last life, and how you feel about how well you did, or where you had failings and where there were shortcomings, and they would also like to talk to you about your successes. So it's a very gentle process, and it's one that everyone experiences between lives, after every life. And sometimes people will go before them again before their next life in order to review the life to come. But essentially, what they are very wise, understanding beings who will really review with us where we made our mistakes and how we can do better in our next life. This idea of very old souls and very young souls can be confusing. And let me explain why. You might be an old soul in the sense that you've been around since the Stone Age, but you might not have learned your lessons very well or very quickly. So you might be maybe going from a beginner to an intermediate as opposed to a more advanced soul, simply because you need more time and more lives to do the work that you need to do. I've had other people who have had souls that have progressed very rapidly. I had one lady who in 4,000 years of incarnations on Earth, which is not a long time, moved from the beginner level up to almost intermediate, which is very, very fast. So the reason that I can tell this is by the auras they project in the spirit world, and usually these colors have really no relation to the auras that people who have that ability on Earth can see around us. And from the colors of their energy, I can determine the advancement of the soul. This took a long, long time to discover this and all the other things that we're talking about today. I had to piece together this puzzle. It did not all come to me in a rush with that lady I spoke about earlier, who was my first case in Life Between Lives. I had to work very hard, because people don't volunteer information, in order to get the information that I have written about. It took many, many years. And I'd just like to say, too, that I tried to keep my work unbiased. And when I talk to you about people like guides and the council and so forth, I ask people, what do you see? Not, do you see so-and-so? So that regardless of how many cases have gone before the client I'm working with now, the material seems fresh to them. I ask open-ended questions so that they will come to me with the answers that they're going to frame in their own minds. And one of them is, as I said, that's a very important one, is what we've just talked about, is their counsel, because they really do want to talk to me about these beings and what they mean to them.